Council meeting for January 22nd order has been appropriately noticed.
Yes, Your Honor.
Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Alderman Kavieski.
Here.
Alderman Rogers.
Here.
Alderman Rozak.
Here.
Alderman Shaw. Alderman Ellis.
Here.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Here.
Alderman Swart.
Here.
Alderman Stray.
Here.
The first item tonight is a public hearing. First one is on Newman Companies Incorporated. The purpose of the hearing is to hear public comments on the application for Newman Companies, who is requesting the zoning designation of suburban residential district to be placed on 18.4 acres of unzoned vacant land. Go ahead, Jason.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll give a brief presentation on this application for a zoning change. The applicant is Newman Developments. This is for the rezoning only of some land. The land is 18.4 acres. As mentioned, the adjacent zonings to the north, we have the Wood Creek subdivision, which is zoned SR. To the south, there's some town property. To the east is SR zoning. That's the Pine Ridge Estates subdivision, and then to the west, there's the bypass. So the subject property, again, is 18.4 acres. It is highlighted in yellow. It has residential zoning on pretty much 3 sides, and if you scan out a little farther, you can see there's residential, again, on the other side of the property. It's all residential around it. This is an infill development. The only other zonings in the area that aren't is some multifamily to the south, which we have the Towner Crest on the south side of Lisbon. We also have some multifamily across Rosenau Creek down here, and then some commercial zoning. But from a single family standpoint, it seems to make sense to be infill development. I also wanted to show this map because there's some concerns about connectivity. We don't have the final layout. This is for zoning only, but I wanted to show that there's connections through this up to Highway Z. It's another purpose of this map. So there's people that will live here or existing residents here, if this is connected, could get out to County Trunk Highway Z, get over to such as Piggly Wiggly by heading this way. They don't even have to go down Lisbon Road. So we are working, we feel that this is a key piece for connectivity in the area. Whenever we do a rezoning, we always check the land use plan. We adopted the city's comprehensive plan in December, or actually November, and the plan did show it as yellow. This is the subject property right here. It is zoned for, or designated as suburban residential, so this zoning would be consistent with the city's plan. This land was annexed in 2014. It was assigned a temporary urban reserve zoning at that time. It was not sure what was going to happen, if there was potential for some multifamily on that property. At this time, it was never given a permanent zoning. Now, today, they're coming in for SR, suburban residential. That's single family up to 3 dwelling units per acre. It's consistent with both the zoning ordinance and the land use plan. On the 18.4 acres, it would allow up to 55 dwelling units. If you do the math, they had a concept plan. I'm showing you what's not going to be built, but this is 45 lots. I say it's not going to be built because we are looking at some connectivities, which ones should we use. The town board is going to be discussing that next, the first Monday in February. So we're not quite there yet. It's just showing you an example of what could potentially be built. So what happens from here? We're having the public hearing right now. It's on for action tonight by the Common Council for the zoning. Then they'll come back to the Plan Commission for the preliminary plat, and that plat will also have to come to the Common Council for your approval. Staff is recommending the zoning change this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. We'll take public comment on this item. So if you have a comment on this specific item, please fill out a blue card. Andrew Holtz.
Good evening. My name is Andrew Holtz. I'm a resident of Oconomowoc.
My concern about this development and of all the developments that this committee has approved is if you look at the impact and specifically on the schools, this development goes through and all these developments goes through, the developers walk away with their profit and we're left with the bundle. Based on the growth over our last 4 or 5 years, if you look at the last 4 years, we've added anywhere from 70 to 100 new residences each year over the last 4 years. Projecting out to the end of this year, we're looking at about 340 new residences over the last 4 years. If you take the statistics of that at 1.9 children per household, you're talking about adding 646 students to our school district. We've already had to move out of the high school into Oconomowoc East. Summit, when it opened, the year after it opened, it was overbooked and they had kids in the hallways. We've had to reassign the middle schools and shift some of that load down to the grade schools. The handwriting is on the walls that we're going to be looking at probably a $150 million referendum in the next 3 years for a new high school, a new middle school, and 1 or 2 new grade schools. And I'll be shocked if it doesn't happen. And that's just the schools. You can add in the other impacts that are going to happen. Health and safety, the fire department, police department, roads. All those are going to be impacted as well. And where the developer is going to be at that time. And I think that's something that this committee needs to look at. And I don't think you have. I can't think of the last time this committee has turned away a development. And it's time you start thinking about that. Because the impact on the, while it does increase the tax base, it doesn't take care of that big hit impact when a referendum comes through. And we will be seeing one in the very near future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, we will close that public hearing and open up this next one. This is for Elite Collision Repair. The purpose of the hearing is to hear public comment on the application of Elite Collision Repair for a conditional use permit allowing vehicle service and repair at 156 North Thompson Street. You want to give, because this is for a conditional use
Oh,
permit?
yeah. Well, basically, as you all know, I'm going to be repeating myself. This is
Just so the
a
crowd knows.
conditional use permit application. You are a quasi-judicial body. In that function, you're to listen to the evidence and the information that's provided. You're to determine whether or not substantial evidence has been presented in this hearing for you to either grant or deny the conditional use permit. Either way, there has to be substantial evidence that has been presented that fits the criteria that's within the ordinance that is of a objective nature.
Okay, go ahead, Jason.
Thank you, Mayor, Common Council. I'll give a brief overview of the request for a conditional use permit for Elite Collision Repair at 156 North Thompson Street. The location is right on Fowler Lake. It's on Thompson Street. It's shown here in highlighted in yellow. It's directly across the street from our new public safety facility. It's somewhat in our downtown area. So why are we looking at a conditional use permit for an auto repair when the existing use is an auto repair? Supreme Auto Body has been there since 1982, and when they went in, as far as our records show, it was an allowed use in 1982. They never received a conditional use permit, so we could not attach them to any existing permit. This is a good time that we thought that they should be in compliance with getting a conditional use permit on file. This is the same process we've done when other similar things happened. Van Horn Automotive recently came in and they had to get a conditional use because the Safro Ford did not have one. So this is very typical. Now when lending institutions call my office and say I need a copy of the CUP, I would be able to provide it, granted if it's granted. I wanted to show you an aerial photo of the site. I think it's important to get an understanding of some of the operations. We have the building here as well as an addition that was put on. This is the front side of the building that faces the road. This is facing a parking lot here. This back area is actually screened in. I'm going to show you a picture of a fence. This is a screened-in area where this is the where the vehicles will be kept to be worked on. There's also an important resource, which is Fowler Lake right here. The Plan Commission had concerns about that. I'm going to get into that, but I wanted to show you that as well. The adjacent building here is a residential use, and that might be taken into account as well. Automotive repair, we want to make sure that the existing residences, but just for the record, there's been no complaints about Supreme Auto causing any type of nuisance with noise, dust, or vibration reported to the planning department. So again, here's the front, the north side facing the parking lot. You can see this, actually that's the south elevation, and then this would be the front, the east along Thompson Street. And then this is the north elevation facing Fowler Lake area. This is that screened-in area. There's the fencing. You can see the back side of the fence kind of can close that gate up. We do have standards for conditional uses. There's 6 of them in the zoning ordinance that refers specifically for vehicle repair. Number 1 is all the repair service shall be within the building. 2, no outside storage shall be allowed unless it's in a screened-in area. That's why I showed you the fenced-in area. All vehicles must be parked on a paved surface. It is a paved surface next to the building. Security cameras shall be installed per the police direction. Customer service hours shall only be between 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. And then they must comply with all applicable other laws. If you're wondering about the yellow van that is on site currently, the Plan Commission has concerns about the number of years or the duration that a vehicle can be kept out on the property, and we'll get into that.
That's not your van?
No, it's down by the river.
In the fenced-in.
So again, I wanted to show you the fence screening for the outdoor storage. Here's a picture of it. So this does swing closed, and it is in a fenced-in area, screened from the public view of the right-of-way. That fence, it does encroach into the public right-of-way, and we've asked if the applicant would enter into an encroachment agreement with the city, just basically stating if that fence is ever to be removed, because it is in the right-of-way, it's been there since 1984 on a survey, that it would be at his cost. And he has voluntarily said, I will enter into that agreement. There was some other concerns of the Plan Commission. Number 1, it was that fence encroachment into the right-of-way, and the condition was added that's in your permit, number 12, that talks about an encroachment agreement. The Plan Commission asked me to include that in, so I did. The second item was potential fluids getting into the lake. We all know that Fowler Lake is a very important resource to the city. We wanted to make sure that because of this, if a tow truck was hauling in a vehicle that's leaking transmission fluid or diesel or oil or anything else, we wanted to make sure it did not make its way into the lake. The applicant has responded to that, how he's going to do it, a containment system. It's more of a plastic thing that puts under the car, and then it'll catch all the liquids. He's available to answer questions about that. The Plan Commission wanted the Common Council to be aware of the following concerns. They didn't include it in their motion, but and I feel I'm the liaison here for the council. They wanted to know that the applicant's working with the DNR regarding the pollutants entering the lake, and should any conditions be added to comply. I feel we should not. That's the DNR, that's a separate entity. If they want conditions, they could require that. Parking, they wanted to make sure all the applicants' vehicles are parked in that fenced-in area, and they were wondering if there should be an enforcement mechanism that a maximum time allowed a vehicle can be parked there. I have concerns with that personally. I feel that it would be an enforcement issue. They're behind a fence. How would I get back there to chalk tires? You know, it doesn't make sense to me to go on private property to look at how long a vehicle's been there. And then there was a pier out on site, and again, they just was wanted to make sure the council knew there was a pier and to see if there's any conditions that should be added about that. This is the containment. You can see this is where vehicles will be parked. And then, no, that's not my vehicle. But you can see by the parking lot, it could, if you get a heavy rain, stuff could leak into the water. So the applicant's aware that he'll add containment under the vehicle if anything leaks, but he said his top priority, if a car's leaking, they'll bring it in the shop right away. This is the pier that the Plan Commission was concerned about. It is about an 8-foot drop down there. It looks like there was a lot of brush right in front of it, like it hasn't been used in several years. I don't know. I mean, if they want to fish or launch a kayak off it, I don't see a problem. Piers aren't under the jurisdiction of the city. They're under the DNR anyway, but it is an existing pier out there. And then the outdoor storage, again, these are the vehicles that were currently on site when I was there. I don't know if they're still there today, but they haven't been moved in years. This was a tree growing in front of this truck. But again, if they're behind a screened-in area, so it doesn't matter to me.
I just want to comment on that. Go back a couple slides. Go back one more. If you look at the back end where that van is, that's not screened in, it's just fenced in.
That's
So that, I mean, one of the conditions I think needs to be added is that all has to be screened in. And even along the lake, it should be screened in, because those people across the lake can see what's back in that parking lot. I'm just thinking that would make more sense, is to screen the whole parking lot in, not just the right of way. But we're not talking about it now. I just brought that up now because I saw it.
So the conditional use permit that you have in the packet, it talks about the hours being between 7:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. That matches their application, that conforms to our code. So that's our evidence that we need. Outdoor storage, there's no outdoor storage other than vehicles in a screened-in area, and they will agree to that. Security cameras, they said they will work with the city police and work with installing cameras if the police feel they're needed, and then the number would be up to the police. I added a sand and grease trap is required. If they don't have a working one, that they have to have that taken care of. That can be placed on the building inspector to verify that. An easement, I'm going to talk a little bit about that. That's part of the conditional use. We have a plan that shows a potential future path around Fowler Lake, a walking path, and we made a condition. The applicant has voluntarily said, you know, if that ever does happen, he'd be willing to grant an easement. So there's a condition that they would grant an easement for a future path along there. We don't know what the city's going to look like in 50 years. There could be a nice walking path, and I'll show you a plan that does show that. The encroachment agreement for that fence in the right-of-way, we talked about that. That's in the conditional use. And then the containment system must be used for leaking vehicles. They did go through the architectural commission, and they did say that they will remove some awnings and paint the building, and the colors are up there, Mindful Gray and Sea Serpent. So they're going to paint the building and improve it and put some money into it. Now, the Fowler Lake pedestrian loop, it's shown here on the downtown plan, the East Wisconsin Avenue plan that was done several years ago. It shows it. I'm going to zoom in. Right there is the subject property in yellow and highlighted with a red circle around it, and it does say pedestrian lake loop. I don't know if this will ever happen, but you know, it is an important part of the city. It's a gateway in, and there could be a potential loop there, so I just thought I would share that with the council, that we were being proactive. We asked for Century to give an easement before we owned it. They did. They voluntarily gave an easement for that. Now we own the property, but then there'd be this one, and it would come out, so all the way to the bridge. And again, it would go all the way around the potential trail. So the Plan Commission on January 8th, they did recommend approval of the conditional use for Elite Collision Repair with the conditions in your packet. They also wanted you to be aware of those other things. Staff recommends approval as drafted tonight.
Thank you, Jason. Any comments on this again, please fill out a blue card. I have one, Aaron Youngbluth was the applicant.
Yeah, I was just asked by Jason to share that, going over the standards that'll be expected of the business. And, yes, all repairs will be conducted within the building. The building's plenty big, I won't be working outside. And, no storage outside unless within a designated screened area, and I will screen the other two sides if that's needed. And, all of the vehicles will be parked on a paved surface. There's no unpaved surfaces around on the property. And I will install the security cameras as the police chief and I discussed already. And the customer hours will be between 7 and 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. There won't be any earlier or later than that. And I will comply with all the other laws. So that's it.
Good, thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, we will close that public hearing. We will take up the conditional use permit later in the meeting tonight. Next item is comments and suggestions from citizens. I have two cards. One card is from a Faye Sanders. That is on the Blue Ribbon Stadium, and we cannot take any comments on that tonight. Since this will be part of a conditional use permit, the comments will have to be made the night that that is on the agenda. No. Not till
Jason
February.
does.
February, right? The second meeting in February. So that, come on back for that then,
The
and
18th.
the 18th. The reason that is a conditional use permit, and you have to speak the night that it's actually being voted on. Okay? Second one I have is Joe Persick.
Thank you. Jill Persick, 701 York Imperial Drive in Oconomowoc. I just have some perspective on the subject of 5G wireless, and I've got a press release that I'm going to give you. But this Saturday is a global day of protest against 5G. So it's, January 25th. And there's an international appeal that's going to be delivered to governments around the world, and it's signed by scientists and doctors from 202 countries and territories. And according to this press release, an international appeal to stop 5G on Earth and in space has quietly been making its way around the world. And it's signed by 4,800 scientists, 2,800 medical doctors, 770 beekeepers, 2,000 environmental organizations, and 180,000 other people from 202 countries and territories. And the appeal calls on the world's governments to stop the deployment of 5G. So, we're looking at what's happening with 5G wireless in Oconomowoc, but I wanted to kind of give a perspective for those of you that don't know that it's like a global concern with a lot of, many, many thousands of scientists and experts. They're saying 5G will bring a huge increase in radiation virtually overnight everywhere, in cities, suburbs, parks, nature preserves, wildlife refuges, oceans, Greenland, and Antarctica. And the organizers of the events, what's really driving it are a lot of the victims, people that have been harmed by wireless technology, and to a point where they can no longer participate in society. So they're like driving this push, and they've got the ears of the scientists and other people studying it. And, I know it's easy to think that our hands are tied, because I sometimes feel that way myself, and I've heard a lot of your comments about, well, it's state and federal issues, and I know that. But there are countries, a lot of countries and communities around the world that are really pushing back on all the laws. And pushing back on the lobbyists and all the government agencies and the tech companies that are rolling this out. So, you know, and they're also, communities are also, there's lots of examples of communities finding ways to be able to protect their citizens with the rollout of 5G wireless and address all their concerns. And I'm really happy to see that your vote is coming up tonight for the ordinance for the technology committee. And people that I've talked to in the community are really hoping that, and they're really counting on, you know, that committee, particularly for preventing all the unintended consequences that'll come from 5G wireless, that are documented and signed off on by those 190,370 scientists, doctors, and other experts who've signed that international appeal. And I have copies of the press release for you that I'll just hand out. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Any other comments? That's the only card I had. Seeing none, we'll move on to regular business. We'll wait till she's done here. Yep.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, tonight on the, excuse me, first item is consent agenda. The consent agenda tonight has licenses, the final release of a credit letter for Lake Country Village number 1. Most important thing, I guess, tonight is setting the trick or treat hours. And I see former Alderman Harrow here, so he'll like this. October 31st, so Halloween night, from 6 to 8 p.m. And the treasurer's report. So we need a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any comments? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda passes. Next item, Plan Commission, consider acting on ordinance to rezone lands suburban residential district for Pine Ridge Estates West Development. We need a motion to approve the ordinance to rezone the lands.
So moved.
Second.
This is the, what we had the public hearing on. We all know the areas. This is again just on the rezoning. The plat and everything else will be worked out by Jason and the developers, and that will be coming forward to us at a later time. Any questions, comments? Go ahead, Matt.
Is there anyone here from Newman Companies? You are? I really have no specific questions. I just was curious if someone showed up and, you know,
Yeah, I'm happy to hear.
cared about the
listen, so.
55 new parcels, so.
55 is the maximum number of parcels.
Okay. How many do you think are going to go in there?
Conceptual plat had 45. It
45 or
would
46,
Stay close
yeah.
to that number.
Okay, I appreciate it. What's your name?
My name is Brian Lindgren, Newman Developments.
Go ahead, Charlie.
Yeah, I can certainly support this because I think it makes sense in that area that this should be suburban residential. That doesn't mean I'm going to necessarily support the drawing that we were given, you know, the plat there. Coming out onto Lisbon Road off of Mohawk Ridge is a tough intersection there. There's a pretty good sized hill. That one
Yeah.
bothers me.
Yeah, that's not going to be approved.
It's specifically one of the
Strictly
issues that will be
zoning and
discussed with the
This is
town.
just for zoning tonight, yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Lou.
I have similar concerns in regards to the safety on Lisbon Road. I believe there needs to be an expansion of Lisbon Road in order to accommodate that traffic more safely. And I think your organization has some control over that southern land. And I'd like to see some opportunity to work with that in that expansion.
Yeah, at this point, the preliminary plat is evolving and
No.
the
Yeah.
topic of any sort of connectivity is really the main point of conversation
Yep.
ongoing with the town.
Without a doubt. I think it's the right spot for it, but the safety associated with the traffic is also a concern.
Right. Okay, Tom?
If I remember correctly, why my mind is still not too fresh anymore, that phase, we talked about that a couple of years ago whenever you put the other one in. That phase came up pretty good, but, you know, there was some comments in that you would never, ever do anything with any other connections into that property if it ever got developed. I got it on my notes, so just let you know, do the right thing.
I don't think they owned it at that time.
Yeah, we
No,
did.
well, that was the same section. I mean, you knew it was gonna happen, because I said that. Because my partner over there, the same thing. I says, I knew somehow, that's gonna be brought up. So it is brought up, so just do the right thing.
Thank you for comment. All I can say is I wasn't with Newman Developments at the time, so I
No.
have no idea what those conversations
Okay.
went. Okay.
Karen, you had a comment?
I would be in support of this project. Jason's saying that there's no intention to put Mohawk Ridge through, but one of the schematics makes it look like it's coming awfully close and that potentially in the future it could be put through. And I have that same concern.
Yeah, that drawing that you saw shouldn't be, really shouldn't even been on there, because that's not one that's gonna happen.
Yes.
No.
You have different counsel, you never know.
It's the town has got a
I
lot
know,
to say with
you
it,
never
so. Go ahead, Matt.
It just, I mean, we should remember this is just the zoning, so we're not talking about where the roads are gonna
Right.
go yet. That'll come up, and we'll have a chance to look at that.
Exactly. Any other comments on the zoning? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rogers.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Okay. Next item, consider acting on amendment to Village Crossing 2 condominium plan to add 1 building, 2 units on Belmont Lane. We need a motion to approve the amendment.
I'll make a
Move.
motion to approve the amendment.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Jason, you want to just give an update on this? This is something else that we talked about it. Oh, hang on a second. Without objection, we will waive the second reading of the ordinance to rezone the lands. Seeing none, we will waive the second reading. Okay,
thank
go
you.
ahead.
Thank you. The application for the amendment to the condominium plat for Village Crossings 2, it's just simply moving a lot line a little bit further to the west to incorporate 1 building with 2 units into this original phase. It's a very minor item. They have buyers in mind for this. They would like to plat this building so they can legally sell it with a tax key number. This is very common that they start building before it's platted. I talked with plan commissioners about this that are in this business, and this is very common that they can plat after the fact. So it's just more of a housekeeping item. Generally, they like to do more phases, more buildings, and when the next phase comes in, it'll have more buildings, but they have a few yet in phase 1 to build, so they didn't want to, they just thought moving the 1 line over to get that 1 building in would be good enough at this time.
Thank you. Questions? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rogers.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Okay, next item, consider act on an on a conditional use permit for Elite Collision Repair to allow vehicle service and repair at 156 North Thompson Street. Do we have a motion to approve the conditional use permit?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, this is what was at the public hearing. Jason, you want to give us more?
I just want to remind you, the Plan Commission did motion to bring this forward with a positive recommendation. I updated the conditional use permit that's in your packet. I added conditions 12 and 13, the encroachment agreement, as well as a containment system. I'm here to answer any questions, and the applicant's here if you have any questions about that containment system. He did say he was going to be bringing some literature about that if you're interested in seeing it or learning more about that, so.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Kevin.
My concern with this is, as I look at the project, is that after a while, that could become a junkyard.
This has been there for 30 years. 40 years? 40 years. So, I mean, it's been there for a long, long time.
So of those cars.
It's just a continuation of the business. They're just selling it and have a new owner. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Stan.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll defer to you, Stan.
Okay. Yeah.
Oh, you're first, okay. First shall be last, last shall be first. I just had one quick question. I thought one of the 6 standards was screening, and the applicant came up and said he'd screen both sides. I don't know what he meant by that, if he meant the lakeside too. So finish the lakeside and the other side that's kind of not
Yes.
completed? Okay, I think, the way I read the 6 conditions as presented, is it's supposed to be screened on all sides. So I think he has to comply with that, so I don't think we need to add anything more. One thing I guess I would consider, is if he screens, he could also screen maybe with vegetation. I mean, I don't know if that's allowed, but it's just something to consider along the lakeside. It might look nicer than a big fence, with that plastic stuff that screens, maybe something, more of a landscaping on that side. But I think the conditions, the 6 standards include screening on all sides, and you can enforce that without any additional conditions that we put on here tonight. So I'm going to vote in favor.
Any other comments? You had something, Stan?
I'm in favor of this, I'm gonna support this, and I appreciate the effort for the trail and the easement. I think that vision of making that side of our Fowler Lake more accessible and pedestrian-friendly is something that we should continue to explore, and without that kind of easement, it would make it more difficult to move that forward, so I appreciate that.
I think what you're talking about with doing vegetation there, you're still gonna need a fence there, because if you do have a trail there, you're gonna have to have a fence on the backside so people don't go wandering into this parking lot.
Yeah, I think
I just think for security, it makes more sense to secure that
the
whole
way the
parking
standards
lot.
are is it's supposed to be screened, so I think Jason, without additional conditions, can enforce that, and they should put it up, and I think it's the right thing to do, so. And he said he has no problem doing it, so.
Charlie?
Yeah, I do have a question about item 3, the approved activities and the hours of operation. It says here 7:30 to 6:30 PM Monday through Friday, and yet in the slides, we were seeing 7 to 8 PM.
That's our condition, and it has to be within those hours.
Okay.
So his hours are
So the
less than what our,
conditions in the conditional use permit till 6:30 are the ones that would count.
well, it should be 7 to 8 PM, but his hours are gonna be less.
His hours will be less.
Okay.
So it's just, it gives him a little flexibility.
Okay.
Dan?
You have a condition in here that is precedent, and it requires an agreement. I do not want to see this conditional use permit signed until that agreement is signed. Otherwise, if we have problems with the agreement, we'll have to revoke the conditional use permit. We'll have to
This
go
is on
through-
the easement?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, the encroachment. So my request is, as part of this, if you approve it, that the direction is that the mayor is not to sign it until that agreement is in place.
Do you want us to do an amendment to the motion?
We don't, do we have a motion?
Yes, we do.
Oh, well, I would ask then for an amendment to the motion.
I'll amend the motion to reflect what city attorney just said, that the mayor not sign the conditional use permit until the easement agreement is been agreed to and, I don't know, co-signed.
It's just basically you have to put it in writing.
Yeah.
Yeah, second.
Second that.
So that's a motion to amend. We should vote on that separately.
And we can do that all at the same time, so.
Fine with me.
Because you're gonna have to have the encroachment agreement, and I'm gonna have to sign that too. So, but that doesn't have to go through council, does it?
No.
No, that's just something
Oh, I
that,
assume that they'll allow me to approve it.
okay, so
We
we have an amended motion, so we need a vote, any questions on the amendment? Seeing none, call the roll on the amendment.
Alderman Kavieski,
Aye.
Alderman Rogers.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwarth.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Now we have an amended conditional use permit. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just, for purposes of the record, I believe that the applicant has presented substantial evidence that they've complied or will intend to comply with the 6 standards as laid out in our ordinance for a conditional use permit for the auto body repair shop.
Any other comments? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the amended conditional use permit. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rogers.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwarth.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Next item, consider act on a final plat for Prairie Creek Ridge Addition Number 4. We need a motion to approve the final plat.
So moved.
Second.
Jason, you should just stay up here.
Why did you pull up a chair?
Forgot we had a last item here. This is the final plat for the Phase 4. This is, the plat resembles the preliminary plat. This is so they can actually phase or sell these lots within this development. The infrastructure has been put in, except for, I believe, some of the sidewalk, which is, They ran out of good weather last fall, so they're going to put that in spring. But this is pretty much the final phase of this development. They don't have any more lots to plat. This is the remainder of the Prairie Creek subdivision.
Questions? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second on the floor. Call the roll.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rogers.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to new business. First item is consider act on an ordinance to create section 1.47 of the City of Oconomowoc Municipal Code, creating the Technology Committee. We need a motion to give the ordinance its first reading.
So move.
Second.
Lori?
A special committee was appointed by the mayor and met on November 14th to discuss and recommend the purpose and structure of a technology committee. The attached ordinance lays out the recommended structure by that committee, which is to form a committee of 7 members, 3 council members for 1-year terms, and 4 citizen members that will be two-year revolving terms. Does that make sense? 4 citizens, 2 years each, but 2 years.
They all won't be 2 years initially.
Right, thank you.
2 year, 1 year, then it
2 year, 1 year,
alternates.
then it alternates.
And then it alternates, you're right. So the committee also discussed the mission and objectives of this committee, and they're laid out in the memo that is in your packet. Once this ordinance is passed, the committee will be formalized in the city and can begin to meet.
Do you have any questions for Lori? Go ahead.
I guess the one question I have, I thought about this. Why do we have so many councilmen on this committee?
That was the recommendation from the technology committee.
We have 3 on every other committee. We have, it just makes sense.
And then
That was the choice of the committee that put this together.
I personally would like to see more of, no disrespect to anybody here, but I don't really think we're that savvy enough to understand what's going on as far as technology is concerned. And I'd like to see more residents associated with this than I would actual councilmen. I think we're kind of top-heavy with that. That's my own.
Well, it's 3 and 4, there's still more residents. You could do 2 and 3. I mean, you're still gonna wanna have it close.
And why only 4 residents? Why not 5 or 7?
Well, how many people do you wanna have on this thing? I mean, that's just, I mean, the plan commission is 7 members. How many are in the park and rec? 7?
The 7 members.
7. 2 and 5.
Yeah, I'd rather have something like that than I would having 3 and 4, because I don't think that at the end of the day, a lot is going to be accomplished, personally.
Go ahead.
I was on that special committee, and we're following a format that's similar to the other committees, like the mayor said, with 4 resident citizen members, and then as needed, pulling in resources or experts from the outside with various issues that we may be dealing with. So if that helps, I don't know.
Go ahead, Derek.
I think part of the reason for having both is because we wanted to do both internal and citywide technology. It wasn't just about 5G. It's about
Right, I do understand that.
internal city problems and not necessarily community issues, so.
Go ahead, Lou.
I'm really glad that this is here before us to approve. There's been a lot of discussion over the last year or so, and I appreciate the leadership in creating it by the mayor and by the committee in regards to the structure. I'm in full support of it, and I'd support the second reading to move it forward as of today.
Well, one of the things that I was contemplating too is the fact that this, as you see, it's 1-year appointments by council members and then 2 and 1 for residents. And seeing the fact that this council, and I will not be around after April, I was thinking that it would be best for the new mayor to appoint the committee so that he could appoint the citizens he wanted. Because I don't think it'd be fair if I appointed the citizens that I wanted and then that current mayor would be with that person for over a year. So that's something that we'll have to decide. I think it makes sense if we approve it now. We know that that would be something that people can start applying for the position, and we can have those resumes on file, because we are gonna wanna have some technology background. And you can get a right mix without having to rush through appointing it, because it's gonna take a few weeks, more than a few weeks, to get people to apply and interviewed to say who would be the best. So that was just what I was thinking, is that we would create the committee now, and that would be a standing committee starting with the new term. Go ahead.
I guess that was my point. My point is, I think that the Technology Committee is a very important one, especially in this day and age. It's just that we need to have savvy individuals that are in that field of expertise to be able to.
Well, and they have to apply.
Right.
And that's what we do with all committee members, is they apply, they send a resume,
Right.
we interview, and then we pick from there.
Okay.
So, go ahead. Do you have something, Tom?
Oh, yeah, I was kind of put back that you didn't think I have any technology. I've got mixology, but, you know.
Any other pertinent questions? Go ahead.
I really appreciate your thought behind the direction you would recommend in appointments. And I don't think there's anything in here that would state if this passed today
There's
that,
nothing that's-
so,
It would be a standing committee starting the new
Yeah.
administration.
cool.
Okay, any other comments? Go ahead.
I'd just like to say, I think this is far overdue. There's so many communities that already have these technology committees. I really like the mission that Lori's come up with. I like the objectives. It seems it's general in a way, but very specific as far as issues that we may deal with. And I would like to also say, again, this is not just about the 5G, but the fourth objective, consider impacts of technologies regarding the cities and public safety, security, and privacy, would incorporate potentially not only 5G, but privacy of drone use.
Yes.
Alderman Rozak and I have talked about that. That will become a sure thing down the road. Autonomous vehicles, we've talked about that. So I think the objectives for right now, and once the committee gets formed, they may change the mission a little bit, they may change some of the objectives, but for right now, I think they're all encompassing in what we need for this committee going forward.
Good. Any other comments? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rogers.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Without objection, we'll waive the second reading. Ordinance is law. Next item, consider acting a resolution waiving conflict of interest between the City of Oconomowoc and the Village of Summit regarding the provision of water service in the area south of I-94 and west of Dousman Road. We need a motion to give the resolution, to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Second?
You want to talk about this, or?
You want me to do this work or not?
No.
Then vote no.
Basically, what it is that the city attorney represents, his firm represents both the village and the city.
Yeah, I know.
And this is just to waive the conflict of interest. So if anybody has any objections, don't vote for it.
Well, my understanding, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Paying you
Yeah,
then?
my understanding was this was for just additional water service to, I believe, a church.
Two
right?
churches,
Two
yeah.
churches. That's not called out for in this resolution. It just is formalizing a written agreement extending water utilities, which is very broad. So what I would propose is we make a very slight amendment to the second whereas clause
Area.
on page 68 of the packet.
I didn't draft it.
Yeah, I know, yeah. So my suggestion is that we just say, we make a change to that whereas clause and that the city and village desire to formalize a written agreement regarding the extension of water utilities into the village for, out of the previously discussed two churches. And then continue the rest of the language as written. Yeah, that's a motion to amend the resolution.
I'll second that.
I was just looking at the,
Do we have a map where they're talking about?
yeah, it's right next to the, we don't have it in this here.
By their village hall.
It's by the village hall, right next to the village hall.
I mean, ideally, it should, I think we understand what we discussed.
We know what it is.
Right.
And then, yeah. 'cause
It's-
it
it's now-
says in there to an area south of 94 and west of Dousman
Right,
Road.
we've got that, we've got the two churches,
Yeah.
that's all that he's supposed to negotiate, right.
We have a motion and a second.
Yeah,
We have we have amendment, though.
it's an amendment.
Okay,
yeah.
so we have a motion and a second on the amendment. Any questions? Seeing none, call the roll on the amendment.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rogers.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
And now it's amended. Any other questions? Seeing none, call the roll, please.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rogers.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Okay, moving on. Next item is consider act on ordinance to repeal and recreate provisions of Chapter 7 of the City of Oconomowoc Municipal Code relating to parking regulations. We need a motion to give the ordinance its first reading.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Chief?
In reviewing Chapter 7 of the municipal ordinance, municipal code, it was determined that parking fine increases were done two different manners. And dealing with Stan on this issue, we determined a way to repeal and recreate the ordinance, so all parking fine increases are done in the same manner. So bringing forward today is the repealing and recreation, which we are recommending approval of.
Okay. Any questions? Seeing none, we have a motion and a second to repeal and recreate the ordinance. Call the roll, please.
Alderman Kavieski.
Aye.
Alderman Rogers.
Aye.
Alderman Rozak.
Aye.
Alderman Shaw.
Aye.
Alderman Ellis.
Aye.
Alderman Spiegelberg.
Aye.
Alderman Zwart.
Aye.
Alderman Stray.
Aye.
Without objection, we'll waive the second reading. Ordinance become law. Moving on, reports and comments from the mayor. I have nothing tonight. Reports and comments from aldermen. Kevin?
I had an experience over the last, I'd say, 3 weeks that I just wanted to bring up in reference to utilities. And Joe, I don't know if he's here or not.
He's back
There
there.
he is. My landlord has been trying for a number of years to get some lights put outside of his building, and for whatever reasons could not do that. I called Joe, and he came down, had a discussion with the landlord. And I guess my point here is this. The employees that came down to put those lights in were very professional. When Vic came outside, one of the foreman went over, shook his hand, explained to him exactly what they were going to do and how they were going to do it. I found it very, very professional. I was very proud of what they did, so I just want to go ahead and give you guys thumbs up for doing it, to the point now that he's just not just going to put those two lights in, but he's also going to put a third one in now. So thank you, Joe. You did a good job.
Yeah, just a quick one. I understand what we did. There was a gal that showed up. I don't know if she's still back there to talk about a project. And I understand why we told her she couldn't talk kind of legally with regard to the CUP process. But I think maybe what we should do is let people know ahead of time that they can't talk about that kind of stuff. Or maybe put something on the little blue form. You know, if you hear about, I don't know, a future CUP,
Yeah.
you can't talk about
Well,
it.
she thought it was tonight, too. so
Yeah, and so, I mean, and just something that, you know, maybe a quick, you know, hey, before comments and suggestions, you can talk about anything, but you can't talk about anything. And one of those things is, if there's a CUP coming up, you can't talk about it.
Yeah.
And people might not always understand, and she probably maybe doesn't understand that, why she couldn't talk. So I think we need to maybe figure out something, a little sign we can put out there, or something on the form, so people understand why they can't, because I think it's disheartening when you're told you can't talk, so.
Maybe it's something on the agenda
Yeah.
set up or something like
Yeah,
that.
just, something on the agenda
It
that
gets
says.
posted, it gets posted online, and the agenda would state, these items would be conditional use at a later date. You can talk them on that night.
I think that'd be fair, something that kind of, so that we don't feel bad telling people they can't talk.
I'd rather we go to Madison, tell them they're full of, you know what.
Well, right, and we've talked about
Yeah.
this, that it's, the whole CUP process has been so changed that it's become
Ridiculous.
cumbersome
Yeah.
for us, so.
Okay. Lou?
Just a couple quick comments. Chili Fest is this weekend on Saturday. It's a great event that that brings a lot of energy and activity to our downtown, continues to make it a neat place to visit. There was a comment made earlier in regards to this body not denying any development in the last however long it's been. And I would say that this body has evaluated the development opportunities that have come to it very thoughtfully. There have been a lot of changes to the development for the betterment of the community, and not all of the development has passed. And I think this body has done a good job working on the best interests of the community. So to have a statement like that, I just wanted to put that on record.
Any other comments? Seeing none, without objection, I'm going to move staff reports ahead of the adjournment since it's in the wrong order. Are there any staff reports?
I noticed that. All right, we're out of here. Staff reports?
I don't know how that happened.
Oh, okay.
Ivan?
We need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. We're adjourned.
Okay.
I just